And then I should be able to post the land manager position in the beginning of December. So hopefully by the beginning of the year, I will have one official title.
Okay.
Will you still be in this was very confusing. Will you still be our personal first line representative?
I would imagine that would fall to the urban forestry supervisor.
I imagine it would.
So whoever that person is will be the point, but I will be right, hand in hand with them.
Is this one step in between what we've always had for years?
I assume so. I'd say that in my experience, okay, and we're live. So maybe we'll talk about that at the report of the natural resource manager so that we can.
Okay, minutes of the October 8th meeting.
Will you approve the agenda first?
We can. That's
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Yes. Any seconds?
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded that we approve the agenda for today. Is there any discussion thereof? Hearing none. All say aye.
Aye.
Or no?
Aye.
Anybody disagree? We go forward. All right. On our agenda would be you next.
Do you want to approve the minutes?
Well, I don't know whether we do or not at the moment.
Yeah, it says approved minutes.
Well, I will, but, okay. The minutes for the meeting of October 8th. Does anybody have any conversation or question about those minutes? The only questions I have are coming up very, very soon in the restructuring of park board, the commissioners, the virtual academy. I think it's all very much in flux. Does anybody have any questions other than what we're going to deal with in a few minutes?
I make a
All
motion
right.
to approve the October minutes.
Anybody?
I'll second the
Thank you.
motion.
Any further conversation? And we will have a vote. All in favor, aye.
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 Any dissension?
Aye.
Thank you. We will go ahead. My conversation regarding the minutes will come up in a moment. Okay. Report of the natural resource manager.
Did you guys have any questions about the monthly report?
Well, I did not have any questions about the monthly report.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any questions about this monthly report?
I will touch lightly on some of the things on here as well.
Right.
So, okay. So just to give some background, so as of October 18th, I was appointed to the division manager position for the newly created natural resource management division. So that division is composed of urban forestry, land management and conservation, explore nature, and green space. So with that, the urban forestry supervisor position came open, and we still have a vacancy for our land manager position for land management and conservation. So currently I am filling the duties of all three, both so the division manager, urban forestry supervisor, and the land manager. And the goal is that by the beginning of 2021, we will have the supervisor of urban forestry and the land manager position filled. Supervisor of urban forestry is an open position, so anyone can apply to it. The land manager position is a promotional position from within, so you have to have had at least 2 years of experience working in the park board in a current leadership role. So that's the latest update on that.
Where do I get my application?
The
Paul and I are applying.
It is posted on Indeed, and you can find a link to it on our Facebook site. And then if you go to the city's website, you can also find a direct link to apply through NeoGov.
Thank you.
Any further?
So if no further questions on that, I'll just dive into a few other updates. So we did have our kickoff for the urban tree canopy assessment.
Oh, good.
So the flyover, as noted, took place in September. We had a meeting with the stakeholders and the contractor, who was Planet Geo, to kind of take a look at some of the preliminary data. It is, I will say, pretty amazing. Just seeing the downtown area in some very high quality LiDAR. We'll be getting more information out to you in December. We'll be taking an update to the park board, just giving them a breakdown on the timeline. And I will get that information out to you guys at our December meeting as well. So just preliminarily, the timeline, it takes us into January of 2022. So we'll be working on this over the course of the next year. We hope to have some data back by this time next year to at least give us a breakdown on what the canopy is per neighborhood. And then the last few sections of planning will be developing specific planting plans based on priorities that we set, that the stakeholders set for planting. So that can include anything from, heat island, stormwater mitigation, socioeconomic demographics, air quality. All these things will be taken into account collectively. They will be rated based on highest priority, and that'll give us a prioritized planting plan for the entire city. And I believe the county as well. I believe the UTC extends to the county, maybe not in as great a detail as we will have in Cincinnati, but it will be, I believe the county will have a planting plan as well. So that's the update on
Headed
that.
by Great Parks.
No, the main player for the county has been MSD.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep, MSD is the second largest funder for this project.
Okay.
Aside from that, we have been steadily working through our preventative maintenance cycle. So this year we got all the removals done in the West District, and we're currently working in the Northwest area on pruning. So that's, College Hill, North Side. I don't have all the list in front of me, but about 6 neighborhoods. We did find that we have an excess of funding that has not been spent over the years. I recently saw a breakdown of our bank account, which will allow us to get caught up on our PM cycle. So this year we'll be working through that Northwest district, and then we'll be moving into our Central district, which has quite a few large neighborhoods. And then we will be doing PM marking for our Northeast district. So hopefully by this time next year, we're caught up completely on our 6-year pruning cycle, so that we can get back into rotation.
Was this money actually left in the preventive maintenance budget, or did it come from somewhere else?
So this money is from
The money
urban
left
forestry
over.
assessment. Yeah, so it's all from the urban forestry assessment. It's funding that wasn't spent in years
Okay.
prior.
Yeah.
So the current CFO was able to go back through all the way to, I believe, 2005, and just pull a report on the final expense and the final budget for each year, which accumulated to roughly $900,000.
900,000 we had left over.
Yes, the majority of that was from last year. So it took us almost a year to get contracts in place for the preventative maintenance program. So we did have a good amount of funding left over that just wasn't spent, as well as the way that our budget is projected in CFS, in the city's financial system.
Yeah.
Basically, being new, I tried to stick strictly to that budget, but the budget didn't actually reflect what we had coming in. Our budget was 2.1, and we actually had 2.3 come in. So I had been asking, can I get a breakdown on where we are at revenue wise, because
Sure.
they keep us on a fiscal year,
Sure.
and the assessment is actually on a calendar year.
Calendar year, yeah.
So it was just it was confusing in my first year, and I didn't want to break the bank. So it ended up leaving us with about $400,000 in excess last year. So
You almost don't want to tell.
Yeah, I feel like it's important for you all to know, and to know what we're going to do with it. It will take an ordinance to request that funding, that our budget be altered to include that additional funding. My plan
Okay.
is to spend down what we have in our current budget and then make the
Sure.
ask once we're at that point. Unfortunately, that will put us around the same time as we're asking for the 2022 urban forestry assessment. So I have made the CFO and the director are aware of the situation. We will go ahead and communicate this to council as well, just so that they're in the loop and kind of have an idea of what's going on. I'm sorry, we're going to communicate this to the city manager.
Yeah.
And so from there, it's all good news, especially given, the light of the state of the world that most budgets are in. So I think it's definitely a positive. It gives us a chance to get caught up and buy some much needed equipment that we've been putting off for years. So
When and if this is finally, when it is finally finished, I would love to have a page, nothing in great detail, but I think we would love to have a page that tells us exactly where extra $900,000 came, what we spent it on.
yeah. I currently have a page that can show you at least the years that have accumulated to make that number what it is.
I can't imagine we kept having money left over. How unprecedented.
I'm just,
Most unusual.
the hard thing is, we don't see our bank account. All we
I
see is
know.
our budget.
I know.
Our budget is set. They're biannual. It was set by the previous CFO. And so we're just, urban forestry is this anomaly in the park board where everyone else's budget is set by the city and
But we
it's
are not.
followed
No,
strictly.
I know that.
So having a new CFO, new director, new urban forestry supervisor, it just ended up that we're figuring it out as we go, and at least we are not in
The other
debt.
direction, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, my goal will be, as I continue to build out our 2022 budget, which we'll talk about at the end of the meeting.
Yeah.
I will also be including a plan for that additional overage that we still have. Any questions on that?
Nothing won't, any questions that won't be solved later? Okay, go forward.
Okay, so the other, I guess major point of pride from since the last meeting has been our fall relief program.
Oh, yeah.
We successfully gave away 850 trees in the face of COVID. It was a very streamlined delivery to the community. Everyone showed up and were very respectful, wearing masks and maintaining distance between the volunteers at Mad Tree Brewery and our crew.
Yeah.
It was an exceptional partnership. Mad Tree was very honored to be a part of it and seems to have made a commitment to continue to be a supporter of the program, as well as the Park Foundation.
Okay.
So very successful tree giveaway. Again, all the trees, those 850 trees were requested within 3 days of posting. I presented this information to the park board during my receiving of my new position, and the park board directors gave us the very stern go ahead to at least try to double the number of trees that we're giving away next year. That should at minimum be our goal, and with that, come up with creative fundraising ideas to meet that goal. As mentioned, we do have the partnership with Mad Tree pretty well formalized, as well as the Park Foundation. But the Park Board of Commissioners are very interested in hearing what our creative fundraising ideas are. That being said, I'm a very tactical person. I can plant a tree and I can tell you where to plant trees and how not to. I am not a fundraiser, so I will need the help and support of the board, and your ingenuity as partners in this program to help us think through how to raise, upwards of $60,000 to double, at minimum, double the number of trees we're giving away next year.
Well,
That should be up to the council.
I was gonna say that really
Why
isn't.
should whoever's suggesting that.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
What about the Parks Foundation starting a fund that we could talk to them about, that organizations, communities, or whoever it may be that we all talk to can drop money in it. This is sort of the same thing that they're getting, behind doing the, what's it called? I can't say the word,
I don't know what you're talking
oil
about.
problem, what is it? Dave Gamstetter's getting involved with the Park Foundation.
Oh,
Oh, the climate
Carbon
change.
credits.
Yeah.
yeah.
They're looking into getting carbon credits. That has to do with what we're talking about.
Yeah. So Lindsay's definitely going to dive into that topic a little more down the line. And absolutely, the park board is they are our nonprofit. So they would be the branch where the funding would be, kind of funneled through. So absolutely, 100%, the foundation's on board. It's just getting the conversation started and getting a plan in place to start soliciting. So if anyone's interested in partnering on that, we can have a kind of sidebar conversation and get a subcommittee together to, really start diving in with the foundation and with MadTree, because beyond giving us funding for the program, they're very interested in helping us fundraise as well.
This is very good because we've never been able to utilize that type of company.
Mhm.
Duke Energy was always very helpful in the past, or well, up till a few years ago. But something like, I'm not familiar with MadTree. Is this like a small brewery, of which there seems to be a whole lot popping up here and there?
No, MadTree's been around since the beginning of the microbrew.
But it's a microbrewery kind of thing.
They're bigger than, the
Okay,
Listerman. They're the ones that are right up the street here.
yeah.
And they
They're
have
not
made
on
a
They're
commitment.
not on Anheuser-Busch or anything like that.
Yeah.
They're just, okay.
So I think one of the biggest things is, and I'm not 100% familiar with this, and Scott, maybe you are, the 1% for the planet.
I know a little
Okay.
bit. Yeah, they're, I think the idea is for 1% of their revenues to go towards environmental causes. I know they're really, really behind this. I'm pretty good friends with Brady, one of the owners.
Mhm.
And the person they brought in for that 1% of the planet, or 1% for the planet, is Rhiannon Howler, who formerly worked at the zoo. So I know her really well. So this might be an area where I can help out a little bit.
Speaking of that.
Excellent.
We need to vote on him pretty quickly.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, maybe we should have a separate conversation, Crystal, just before I approach them, let them know I'm now on the board, if I am. I don't know if that's been approved,
Well,
but
that's, before we go any further,
Yeah.
don't you think we should step aside here?
I think we've already done that.
And,
We did that last meeting.
Well, I don't know. He was introduced at the last meeting.
So, Scott, you are going to the park board this month, so next week, for
okay.
approval. And with that, basically the park board is making the recommendation to the city manager that you're approved. So
Okay.
it was an extra step that I didn't realize we had to take.
Yeah, we did.
We didn't do that with Gerald, so this was a first for me.
Well,
So yes, soon enough, you will be a full-time or an official board member. But I
Okay.
think in the interim, I'm happy to have that conversation with you.
Yeah, we'll do that. And I'll probably just go ahead and wait to until that approval before I go, talk to Brady or anybody. But
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, we're
Okay.
always happy to have community volunteers help out with the board, even if
Yeah.
they're not on it.
Mhm.
well, I'm thrilled, Mr. Borline, that you're going to
At
be
that
with
moment.
us.
Yeah, I'm excited myself. I hope I can give this the time that it deserves. It'll be a priority of mine. So, and I'm sure it'll be very interesting and a lot of cool things to learn. Whole new world for me, the whole city politics thing. So that's different.
Welcome aboard. The other thing is that know you very well at all, but Deb Zurich either worked with or for you. And we used to have quite a lot of conversations, and I miss her. I'm going to haul her out to have lunch or something.
If it's any condolence or any solace or whatever the right word is, I'm a lot like Deb. So we used to like collide because we were too much alike sometimes. But
Awesome. So
Okay, go forward.
the last thing that I have for the Natural Resource Manager report is the very successful planting that we had at Laurel Park.
Oh,
If you all get a chance to go down and check it out, it is impressive. It's almost night and day as far as the number of trees that are now lining the streets, the boulevard there, and the playground.
Park.
So the community overall was very thankful as we were finishing up the project. Community members that were walking around just
Oh, great.
took time to stop us and say, like, wow, this is amazing. The work that you guys did is great. So it was very well received by the community, very well received by MadTree as well. They were our partner on that project and brought out about 80 volunteers. They were some of the best volunteers I've ever worked with. They knew what they were doing. They took direction very well. They took the job serious, and we got the job done within the time frame. So it sounds like they will continue to be an annual partner on these larger plantings, of which I plan to continue to target that West End neighborhood due to the amount of recreation property that we have in the area, the proximity to I-75 for the PM 2.5 mitigation, as well as the heat island impact that is hot and heavy down there.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
What is Laurel Park?
A little teeny thing.
Laurel Park is it's off of Ezra Charles. It's between Central and Lynn.
Okay.
It is
Just a little.
it's very neat. Like it's almost like a greenway that was designed to connect from Port Street, and there's the Queensgate ball fields that are right next to the expressway, all the way up to Liberty, where it's just Liberty is such a hot and heavy street. So this greenway, it's right by FC Cincinnati. It runs pretty much the length, a good portion of the length of the West End community. And ideally, the intention that I have is to kind of create this nice green urban oasis over the next 30 years, maybe 20 years to really kind of improve that area. So
Sometimes people don't even realize sometimes that it's a park.
yeah, it's definitely, and I think it meets the character of the Cincinnati Park Board in that, the original founders of the park board wanted to make Cincinnati a city within a park.
Right.
And the fact that you don't even realize that you're in a park, but it has this parkway kind of majesty of feeling down there. It's really cool. So Ezra Charles is also a parkway. So it has about 20 feet of right of way on either side, very large oak trees. The park itself is very well, has lots of canopy. So our major improvements were within the right of way. So
Really? That's great.
street trees.
Street trees. There's a little chunk of land over by UC that's almost the same thing. It's this little strip over there on for Martin Luther King. All right. Any questions further for our manager? Are you satisfied to go forward now?
Yes, ma'am.
Ordinance, Municipal Code 743. This is somewhat similar and yet somewhat different from the original ordinance. I don't see any major, do you see any major differences here? I see one. One was,
That's not the ordinance. That's
I
the
was just
bylaws.
doing the proposed bylaws. I was looking up to here because the ordinance, the bylaws can go on the ordinance. The ordinance is over here, but I want to look at this a minute.
Well,
The ordinance doesn't look any different except. Does anybody pick up anything different here? I picked up one.
It increases the board by to 11.
By 2 more, yeah. That was the only,
So the major difference that should be noted is the definition of a public tree.
yeah.
So historically, the definition was just fell within, just trees that were within right of way, street trees. So by expanding the definition of a public tree to any city owned or city controlled property, as well as street trees, it extends the protection of this ordinance across the city owned properties. So what's good about this is that it allows us to adequately protect trees that are owned by the city. For example, trees that are on park board property historically had not had the same protection as street trees. Or whenever trees were cut down, they were not appraised. It was rather, a 1-for-1. Like they cut down a 20-inch tree, they replace it with a 2-inch tree.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, from a park board standpoint, this cleans up a lot of the questions around what mitigation tactics we are to use. The issue that may arise is that it also will protect trees on other city-owned property. So trees that are cut down, say on MSD property or DOTE property, could fall within the same realm of protection. So that's one of the big things that I wanted to just run by you guys to make sure that we're all on the same page and to see if there are any major questions or issues with that.
Yeah, Crystal, just for clarification, MSD property is normally owned by the county, so they wouldn't follow under that.
Okay.
That was, MSD property is all owned by the county, isn't it?
There's some question if the city owns some, but a majority of it is owned by the county.
Yep. So it would be city-owned property.
Only.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I had,
And then
you
I
said
put a comment in the chat box on 743.7. We talk about permits. We ought to add in there that
yeah,
if the work is in the right of way, they also need to obtain a right of way permit from DOTE.
yes. Permits required. You wanted to add what?
I put a comment in the chat box. It says, if any work is within the right of way,
Yeah,
a right of way permit is also required by the Department of Transportation and Engineering.
well, let's reword this then.
It's okay.
Obtaining a permit from the director, that would be you, and or what?
It's right here.
I can't even see that. Speak that out in English.
Highway permit.
Just a reminder that if you're working in the right of way, on a street tree, you not only need a permit from the Parks Department, you also need one from the Department of Transportation to work in the right of way.
Okay,
Okay, I made note of that, Don, and we will draft that edit in as well.
Thank you.
that's kind of interesting because I got into a terrific fuss over with a piece of property that I own. In just that category, and we finally worked it out very well, but I wasn't the one fussing, but a few other people on the street were.
So Don, Sheila asked that you email that to her directly so that she can draft the edit if you have any specific language you would like to include.
All right.
Thank you.
Now, I have a question. We have number, I guess it's up here, E. The 8 members not representing city departments. The 8 members not representing city departments.
Yeah, because we had 6 and then we added 2 community at large.
Okay, this is a little confusing and I'm not quite understanding here. The reason for including 2 additional is what?
So that we can have more board members that are representative of the community. Through our draft edits in December, it was determined that if we have our expert appointees, so the 2 from the green industry, 2 from the business industry, those representatives do not necessarily need to live in the city, but they have to be affiliated with the city.
Is true.
Yes. The 2 community at large members that we currently have
Do live in the city.
must be from the city, and
Correct.
the 2 additional community at large members that we are proposing to add
Should be.
must also be from the city. Allows us to have a more representative community at large section of our board that aren't necessarily experts but can weigh in. And are representative of the neighborhoods, the 52 neighborhoods that we work for.
8 members of the board not representing city departments shall have staggered terms. Well, they sort of do anyway, as to create continuity in the business. 1 green industry, 1 business, and 2 community representatives. Is that the new language?
That entire section is new.
Okay, but we've always had people representing green industry, as in Reno.
Yes, ma'am. And the business,
And Deputy
yes.
when he was here. And 1 business, and we're the 2 community representatives.
So this is saying that every 2 years, rather than having the entire board turn over every 4 years, every 2
Which
years,
is a good thing.
every 2 years, 1 of the green industry, 1 of the business, and 2 of the community at large members will be voting for them.
Mhm.
You know, those will be the turnover positions. That way, it's basically splits the board in half
It does.
and allows us to.
I don't know about anybody else, but I can't hear.
Yeah, I can't either. Looks like we lost her.
Well, that's almost a compliment.
Can you hear us?
I've got your voice now.
Yeah.
Rena Runk has your voice now.
In other words, don't look away.
I think it's because I got a phone call.
Does anyone have any more questions with respect to this, any part of this? Urban forestry, sort of a realignment.
Do we need a motion on this?
We do in a minute, yes, very definitely. I want to be sure that everybody,
I don't think so.
well, in a way, if anybody would have great disagreement with it, maybe we don't need a motion, because I think it's not ours to decide, but does anyone else have any more questions about this?
The one thing I could question, one thing I question is when a person comes in and wants to get a permit to plant a tree on the right of way, there's instructions about doing that, and shouldn't that be where we say that they also need to go get a street permit?
Yes,
I
sir.
thought they had to.
That will be added.
I thought that was part of it anyway.
It is. Which is clarifying.
And that's always been the truth, isn't it?
As long as it's in there so they know that before they start digging.
Yeah, that's the edit that we'll make. Go ahead, Don.
And if somebody comes in to our shop that gets a permit permit just to do work in the right of way and there's a street near it, we have a standard note that we put on our permit to say they also have to get a permit from Forestry.
That's good. Is that just
So
something you normally do?
Right, that's just
We can't hear you.
part of our normal process if somebody's working near a street tree. That's just part of our normal process.
Okay.
If somebody's working near a street tree, we put a standard in.
Okay,
Process. If somebody's comes in for a permit,
we're
All right.
losing you.
It's all good. So if there's no other questions, comments, or concerns, okay, so I think the next step for us is to take this to the director to get final approval before taking it to the park board, who will make the recommendation to the council to make the edits. So that's the next long-winded process that we have. If there's no further edits from the advisory board, I will go ahead with the one edit that Don presented.
Correct.
I will go ahead and push this forward to the director.
All right. We haven't had very much contact with the new director at all.
Again, you can set up a meeting anytime and make that happen.
Reno, I think we should, I met her accidentally in the hallway, a little tiny thing. And I think you and I should do our usual shtick that we always did, where we went in and talked to the director once a year. As long as if we are not going to be further closed down in the next couple of weeks. You want to talk about that later? Yo, Reno.
And I'm there. You're up in the air. Yes. I agree.
Okay. All right. So we have done what? Old business?
So the next up is the bylaws.
Correct.
Reno, thank you very much for taking the time to put together this document. It is fantastic. I'll turn it over to you to maybe talk through your process and what you're thinking next steps are, and any feedback that you might want to solicit from the board.
Well, specifically, we wanted to get this out so people could respond from the board. What we're talking about, the bylaws, is that the first and one of the most important things to do is our mission statement. Back, Carol and I can remember back one time when there was a movement to get rid of boards and commissions.
That's true.
And got a facilitator and turned around and came up and facilitated our purposes. And we came up with a mission statement, I believe, back then, but that's so far back in the files that we
Probably have a copy of it.
And so the mission statement, I think, is something that we should take a look at and speak to, because it doesn't have to be on trees and cities, streets, right of way. We just had a discussion about that. What is and Crystal can help us make that clear, what is our full responsibility? Then there's a purpose, but if people would read through these, some of them I kind of just short-circuited a little bit, just so if people, if we needed more information about it. Wendy from the state got me some bylaws. Crystal gave us one from Covington, and I have the bylaws for the park Foundation. Foundation says in theirs basically that they can spend money as they would choose.
That's true.
Ours, I don't think when we get down to the one that was in the one from Covington, it said a lot about what their conflict of interest, for example, between board members and businesses and money spent by the city. I don't know too much other than when Eric Depke had an office in Hyde Park, and there was a big hoopla about taking all the trees out of Hyde Park Square,
Right.
redoing the square, that he was put on the spot. And that may have been a conflict of interest, so he just didn't show up.
That's right.
And that eliminated that problem. But I'm not really aware that there's too many times that we would be in a conflict of interest as a board or a member of the board about something the city's doing, because we don't make that final decision.
Right.
So, so I didn't get very heavy in that, but the 5 things that I had that we need to address more. Well, there's 2 things in here that that no one has ever talked about, at least to me. One is item number 6.3. Each member of the board is encouraged to volunteer a minimum of 40 hours per year to Urban Forest Advisory Board, projects, events, continuing education outside of an urban forestry meeting. Each board member should submit their hours quarterly to be logged to the secretary. That
I don't know that we need
Paul
that.
He's probably already done it. He's done for the year. Paul's done for the year, because fall planting is actually the fall planting. Some years, right, Paul?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but
Autumn
then
really.
you've got Scott, for example, who has these meetings and things that bring up things about our natural forest, and it's just, he has a lot of them, and that's the kind of thing we're looking for. Plus, we're looking for people to go to community groups. Like I would go to the forum in College Hill where I live and talk to them about planting of trees and maintenance of trees, and seeing if we can get a few volunteers from that to plant trees or that. And then the last one is the annual board report. Do we need to? Carol and I will go to the director and talk about what we're doing, but do we need to come up with a report? The staff comes up with a report. The staff talks about what they've done. We just read one of them for a month. I'm just talking about a brief outline or a report that we do about what the board has actually done, so we justify our own purpose. Is that necessary? Question. Those things are not. I popped them in there, put it that way. Do we need to be in our bylaws explain any more information about 743? Is 743 something that we just refer to, or do we have to put in there, for example, how it says things? These are questions. Establishing bi-monthly meetings. A lot of these ordinances, as we have 6 meetings, which is theoretically bi-monthly. Do we want to establish in our bylaws that it's the second Thursday of every other month at 8 o'clock, and put that actually in our bylaws?
I don't see a reason for it. Do you? It's a normal meeting.
That's a question, and I see it in a lot of other ones.
Well, we've always, we at one time, you and I remember when we met at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then there was the 11 o'clockers, and then all of a sudden we became the 8 o'clock crew. So we have had it was never written in stone when we had to meet. And how does anyone else, Caroline?
There was a conversation about 2 board members, one being that she doesn't like to get up for 8 o'clock meetings, and doesn't want to wait till a 12 o'clock meeting. And the one that won out the decision to be at 8 o'clock hasn't been on the board for the last 15 years. But anyway.
I know. Any conversation, Paul?
Conflict of interest. I discussed that briefly. How far do we have to go into our bylaws to explain to our other members, or to our members, what the conflict of interest is? If some of us did that first Zoom meeting for the city, we found out about conflict of interest. And the one thing that I learned in there is that when I ask for board members to respond to these in here, write up something that they think it should say. I would recommend we send that to our secretary, which is in the park board, because anything that is sent between members of the board, what they talk about a round robin or so, is a bad idea. So if we have ideas, we could come have a special meeting or one of our meetings when we bring up all the issues we want to do to write up a set of bylaws. We need our secretary to be able to present it to the board, I believe. The other one is board members to be more inclusive. I think we need something in their statement about the board. The board is 4 people that are at large and 4 people that are business, but I think we need to be more inclusive. And we all know what that means.
So Reno, I do note in here that you did take it pretty much directly from the edits that we made to 743.
Yeah.
That the 8 members at large shall demonstrate an interest in forestry as well as be representative of the social and geographic diversity of the city.
Yeah.
So I feel like we covered that.
Okay.
As far as whether or not we need to spell out all of what's happening in 743, I don't think so. The purpose of this document is to guide the board itself. And I think you did a great job by stating in section 6.1 that you have the powers granted under chapter 743 of the CMC. So
yeah,
I think overall it's a great document.
And the last one I have is that we haven't had an appeal lately. You haven't been here for an appeal, I believe, with the board. But when we do have appeals, we used to set it up where the person could speak for 5 minutes on the appeal. Let's just talk about where the tree's planted. And they don't want it in front of their house. So we talk about, so they can come and talk for 5 minutes. We had a previous board member who came and talked for 30 minutes.
Right.
And had 4 points that he brought up 5 times.
Yeah, that should probably be.
I really believe we need to have something in there to, if we start having any appeals, that the people should present their time at a certain time for a certain length of time. And then you have the right to, or say the city person has a right to have the same length of time to present to our board.
Reno, 5 minutes, would you say 10 would be excessive?
If I'm bringing it up to the board, if we had 3 people come in and complaining about where the tree's being planted, then if we did 9 minutes, for example, each one of the 3 could speak for 3 minutes apiece. Or one person could speak for 9.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of that. We did 5 minutes way back when. We gave them 5 minutes to say their piece. Because sometimes one time the problem was the planting of the tree was very poorly planned because that's where they put their garbage cans.
That's right. Well, and I don't think we're ever going to have a situation where one entire block, the members of every single house on one entire block in Bond Hill, we must have had 20 people coming to that meeting to object to. They didn't want any trees on their street, period, paragraph. They did not want them rake the leaves. Well, that we kind of dispensed with them in a hurry, but citing them all kinds of street tree laws.
Well, then
we're not going to have that again, I don't think.
Well, if we put it in our bylaws that we accept, some length of time for the presentation, then the meeting doesn't have to be this hourly meeting that we want to have take 35 minutes on one appeal.
Reno, I do think it's a good idea to add a section about the appeals and reference section 743-29 from our ordinance, which clearly lays out the expectations for an appeal, aside from the amount of time that they have to present. So if there's any procedural aspects that you want to add to that appeal process for when people are presenting before the board, I think that may need to be included in the ordinance.
Okay.
At least that would be my question.
Rather than the bylaws.
I mean, it could be reflected in the bylaws as well. That may be one area where you do want to have some, administrative aspects included that touch upon appeals. But yeah, it seems like that section in particular should at least be called out in our bylaws, since that is one of the key functions of the Urban Forestry Advisory Board.
Okay, yes.
How do you want, where would you want to put that? At the end?
Responsibility of the board, maybe?
Yeah.
I think, yeah,
Member powers and responsibilities.
I don't know if we need a separate section for it. I don't think that.
No, we don't.
The responsibility of the board. Because
Could
it
be.
will end up being the responsibility of the board to cut that person off at whatever length of time that is.
6.4, would you want to add it there?
Point 4?
6.
Yeah,
6.4. Almost a
yes. That'd be good.
compliment. Someone can't hear me.
So Reno, if you don't mind drafting that section for what you think it should be, that would be phenomenal. And then we could just send it to Sheila and she can add it back to the document. I think the other thing that you noted that I don't see in here is that annual report of the board itself.
We've never had to do
That
this.
This is why,
That is annual.
If-
board
I think it would
report
be-
is 8.1. The year ending report of the Urban Forest Forward Board shall be compiled under the direction of the board chairman and vice chair, presented at the regular meeting, and upon approval, presented to the park board or to the director. Should be to the director, maybe, whatever.
If we have been supposed to do this, we have not been doing it. Is this something that
it's new.
this is new?
Does, you're
Uh,
not going and talking to the park board every month like we did before, like you did.
Yeah,
before.
I haven't been doing it anyway. Well, I was asked not to go.
Right, well, so I'm saying now what happens, how to, get a new park board director and then all of a sudden they find out we're there. How do they,
Well, that is an interesting point, which never seemed to be a problem until recently.
and.
How do other people feel about it? Let's have a sound off. Caroline?
I'm first asking board members in this thing to quarterly give a report on what they've done as far as their 40 hours of community service, one way or another. And then when that's all done, we compile it and hand it to the director or to the park board.
Reno, I think that's a really good idea. And then maybe that is also spelled out in this section, that you speak directly to what that board report will entail.
Yeah.
As noted, one of the guiding reasons why I wanted to have bylaws, aside from having some operating procedures for the board, is to set in stone the need for the board to create its own, goals, annual goals. And maybe that's also included in that board report is how we achieved those goals for the board. So a representation of what board members have done to meet the 40-hour requirement, as well as how we have met the goals set forth each year by the board, I think would be a good thing to include it in an annual board report.
Let me ask about the 40 hours. I would say that coming to these meetings
Yes,
would be
included.
definitely included, not necessarily transportation. We won't add that wiggle, but I would think that we should have credit for donating our time to this
Absolutely.
endeavor.
We get 9 hours basically we're going to get 9 hours a year for that. Yeah, because that's volunteer. It's all volunteer. It's not something we're being paid for.
Right.
Not ever.
Plus the extra meetings we have periodically.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But then we have people, then one of the things I'd like to see that expand is board members going to community groups, because we've lost a lot of community groups.
They don't even
involved in
exist
for-
anymore, most of them.
And to
You
take
still-
that
you got-
responsibility away from the director, or I'm not the director, from the staff, or taking the staff with you when you go and talk about some project that's being done.
Mhm.
I would think the board member being there would carry a lot of weight to the community.
Most of the, I mean, you and I go back, and College Hill Forum still is quite in existence, but most community councils, community boards, whatever they were called, Clifton Town Meeting, many of these are no longer even in existence, or they have been reduced in such importance that they are practically negligible. It's just not something that has happened it was not sustained. And I don't know of more than 4 or 5 that still exist. For some reason, College Hill Forum still does. Some of them have gotten into conflict with other groups within their community, like sponsoring one group wants to sponsor a particular little pocket park, and the rest of them see that individual as being in conflict with them. That's not true, but it's the way they perceive it. And they have reduced themselves to a group of 4 or 5 people who just are revoted every year because there's nobody there else to take its place. So this becomes kind of an issue.
There are plenty of forums.
We could easily spend 20 hours apiece hauling up, talking to foundations and that, trying to come up with additional money for the fall relief.
The planning department deals with community councils all the time. Every project we do or every plan we do, they're all still in existence, and we deal with them on a regular basis.
A name on
There you go.
And from you, we could get a list of these communities. We used to have a list of them with the president of the committee, and we would go to them and try to get a tree person that we could talk to. This is back when we started planning and we had to start from scratch. And they would decide what streets we planted first. And they would send out the flyers. They would go pass out the flyers. So when that person complained or whatever, wanted to know something, the first person they went to was their community leader, their community person. And that took a lot of pressure away from everybody else.
That's what the communities are for.
Is your
Very
So-
active.
okay?
So Reno, besides all of that, I think we can figure out how to get 40 hours apiece by connecting to these community councils and any other entity that's representing a community or park area. The other thing that I would like to see in here is the duties and the purpose of the vice chair and chair, as well as how they are elected, how they are appointed.
Okay. Duties and elected. Okay.
Yes. That was a big thing. And then I not to pick on Carol, but I think it is important that every board member be expected to have access to an electronic device so that we can communicate via email. That way, nothing is getting lost.
Well, there is one, but it's not in my house.
So I don't know if that needs to be spelled out here. It seems to me that would be an administrative aspect that we might want to include in the responsibilities of the board member. Is just that they're responsible for not only coming to a meeting, but checking in on the meeting documents that are going out and communicating via email on a regular basis.
Attendance is what you're talking about.
Beyond attendance, yeah. Just being able to communicate, expectations for communication.
Okay.
You do email.
I have email.
Okay.
Mhm.
So overall, I'll review the mission again and tweak it a little bit to include things outside of the right of way. if you don't mind throwing in some extra things on the member powers and responsibilities as far as the purpose of the chair and vice chair, as well as how they're elected, the expectations for communication, and a small section on the appeals process.
We don't need, do we need to mention in here too that the secretary comes from the staff of a park board?
Yeah, I think that's a good addition as well. And I think that's a good way to run the board, especially with the public records request that can come through.
Yeah.
And then I think the only other thing that we had noted was including a section 8.2 to define what is included in the annual board report.
Yeah.
We discussed that a minute ago.
Yeah. So we discussed a summation of the 40 hours for each board member of what was accomplished, as well as kind of a defining of what the board's goals and objectives are for the current year and maybe the next year.
Well, when the park board has a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, this all, I think, is also supposed to update every year the plan. From
Yeah,
our
I did see.
perspective.
Yes, sir. I did see in here that you included, where was that?
Under, there in the beginning there.
Developing and annually reviewing and updating Cincinnati's comprehensive urban forestry plan.
Yes.
That's part of that report that this board approves when we hand it to annually to the director or to the park board.
Okay.
That's part of that plan. That's part of that. We have a suggestion. I suggest that we take all our money and take the worst community we have in Cincinnati and 1 year plant that whole thing. So in 15 years, it meets the 40%.
No.
See, exactly. That's what I mean by, that's outside of our urban forestry, comprehensive urban forestry plan is very high level, right? It's just saying like, our goal was to meet 40% in these certain areas, 25% in these other areas. The goal of the board should break that down in more manageable chunks. So this year we're focusing on College Hill or this neighborhood. This year our plan is to reach out to these particular neighborhoods, get involved, identify a community leader that can spearhead the endeavors. So it's a more granular goal based upon the comprehensive urban forestry plan.
I know that. I just threw that out to get some conversation.
Well, you did.
Thank you.
Any further discussion, and we will have I'm assuming at our next meeting, although I don't know because in December,
We will meet.
we will meet.
Mhm.
And we will have to decide where when we decide what's available to
Yeah.
go.
So just on that same topic, our management plan is called the Natural Resource Management Section Management Plan,
That's right.
just so that you're aware. And so we'll update that to be reflective of the plan that we use to guide our division.
And that will be written at the top.
We don't have a comprehensive urban forestry plan. We have a natural resource management division management plan.
And 3.2A is developing, annually reviewing, and update Cincinnati's comprehensive urban forestry plan. So that would be developing it first.
Okay.
Well,
We do have a management plan.
I was gonna say, we have a management plan. How would that differ from a management plan?
Didn't know. That's a good question.
I mean, I always assumed that it was.
Yeah, I don't know.
So maybe we're trying to split hairs here.
there is a whole section dedicated to urban forestry.
In that, there is.
So I guess that can be a determination of the board, whether you want to have a standalone comprehensive urban forestry plan, which I would be in favor of as well. Or we can just stick with the plan that we already have, which is the natural resource management section management plan. That one.
I
Yeah.
have to think about that myself. I don't have an opinion right now. So.
Yeah, I don't either, and I hate to get us being burdened down with minutia.
I'd like Crystal to explain to us why we needed that, why we need it. Give us some of the reasons, it'd be great.
So in general, a comprehensive urban forest plan is developed by a third party that comes in and reviews the current state of the urban forest. And there's a series of stakeholder meetings throughout the community to determine what the community wants. There's a deep review of our current operations and recommendations for improvement. So there could be merit in doing so. I will say the plan that we have was put together by Dave Gamstetter, who has 30 years in the field and is now working for Davey, pretty well putting together these management plans for other cities. So I think we're pretty solid in the plan that we have. And maybe it's just reviewing and editing this. And then if we determine down the line that we want to bring in a third party to do a deeper dive, we can do so. But
Okay.
this management plan has been my guiding light and my first year as a staff member here.
Yes. Okay.
And it does expand. It expands beyond urban forestry and includes land management, our extreme weather plan, as well as green space. So maybe that's something that you all can review. Yeah, it's a full-fledged document. I have Lindsay going through, just looking for some grammatical errors, making sure that everything looks good from fresh eyes. And so to me, I think it's pretty solid. It gets us through till 2024, and maybe at that point we take a deeper dive and look at what our next steps are.
Okay. Thank you. I think
Any
we
further-
had that plan a year ago. We saw a preliminary of that plan a year ago.
Well,
Yes, sir.
it came out in 2004, and Reno, you may remember, and some of the rest of you, that these were 20-year plans, and 2004 was preceded by 1984, et cetera. Some of which I still have.
So that would be cool to look at. So yeah, we'll put together another 20-year plan in 2024.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Well, I have a question that's been bothering me for quite a while. If I want to plant a tree in a green space somewhere in the city, I have to go, there's about 3 or 4 different organizations that can do the same thing, and I never know who to contact. It takes, who is qualified to plant trees in the city, in recreation areas and little park areas, in the nooks and crannies? Has that ever been delineated, or? I wanted to plant a couple of trees at Liberty and Central Parkway in the green space. I had to go through 3 different departments to find out finally who was responsible for putting trees there. Now, is there some document in this? Is anybody allowed to plant trees, or just urban forestry, or?
You would still have to get approval from the property owner, property manager to plant trees there. We would have to if we were planting on CRC property as well. As far as determining where those green spaces are, that is something that Matt DeBona is currently working on, is mapping out all the green space throughout the city, and who the property owners are that are associated. So I know he's currently working on that. We should have it within the next few months, and then that'll be projected out through CAGIS and OKI and all the other entities that are involved. So school boards, all that good stuff.
I've always been of mind that there should be one outfit that plants trees in the city. That's it. Anywhere. But,
That's not, I don't think that's gonna happen.
I mean, why should you have to go through 3 or 4 different departments in order to find out who to talk to plant a tree in this green spot? It's a pain.
Well, but they're definitely, they're very, they're jealous of their pieces of ground. You understand?
Well, this is a citywide thing. This is for the benefit of the whole city,
It
not
is,
just
but
them.
somebody owns this junk and somebody owns that junk.
It's not, seems like all double work. Everybody's wasting. Double work, triple
Kind
work.
of finding out how you tiptoe through the tulips sometimes.
Right, it shouldn't be that way.
All
Anyway,
right.
I just want to get my 2 cents in.
We can dig in on that if you want to figure it out. At least get the map.
Who to talk to?
Yeah.
What do we call city forest credit?
That's Lindsay. Lindsay's been working hard on that. So Lindsay's going to give us an update, little background on the topic, as well as an update of where we're at currently.
Yeah.
See?
Hey, everybody. Can everyone hear me?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, good deal. I'll just quickly introduce myself. My name is Lindsay Tassone. I am the new rec spec or urban forestry intern. I will be graduating with my master's from Xavier in 3 weeks with urban sustainability, crunch time. So yeah, as Crystal said, I have been working on some strategies, some large impact strategies to enhance the urban tree canopy and best ways to go about very large scale tree planting. One option that we have is working with a nonprofit called City Forest Credits. What makes them special as a creditor is that they work specifically in urban environments. So when they sell their carbon credits, they're a little special because they call them carbon plus credits, because you have more impact of planting a tree in a city. So for example, one of their carbon credits still represents a metric ton of sequestered carbon, but it also measures the social equity, the human health impact, as well as the environmental impact. So when a company is looking for carbon credits, this one's going to be a little more bang for their buck. So if we do a planting project working with City Forest Credits, there's 3 main parts. Basically, there's the creditor, which in this case is the City Forest Credits. There'd be the local operator, which would be Cincinnati Parks, and then the buyer. So in this case, City Forest would approve a project that we put together. We'd obviously be using the data from the urban tree canopy, urban heat islands, as well as other data. We would be doing that in urban forestry. And then the City Forest Credits, they have protocols, and as long as we meet those protocols, which are pretty straightforward, they would approve our project. We then plant the trees, and what happens is they credit us carbon credits in a scaled way. So after the planting, we get 10% of the projected credits. 3 years later, we get 40%, and then 5 years later, 80%. So the good part about this is we are responsible. Well, it's good and bad. So the good part is we're responsible for selling the credits to buyers. So an example of a buyer could be P&G, Fifth Third, I don't know, La Rosa, Skyline, whomever we market to, Cincinnati Children's, for example. And we can set the price of the credits. They found that the average municipality is marking their price at $22 to $30 per credit, but we do have some control there. And we can also pre-sell the credits before we have them. So we could talk to Fifth Third, for example, who I know is interested in doing a large scale project, being a sponsor. They could basically front us the money for the planting, and then once those trees get planted, we then just give the credits directly to Fifth Third. So Fifth Third's happy because they get to say, hey, look what we're doing in Cincinnati, as well as having credits for themselves. So that's kind of it at a high level. I brought this to the Carbon Mitigation Committee a couple weeks ago. There was a representative there from the Cincinnati Parks Foundation. They're super receptive and interested in this particular project. However, Ollie Kroner, who is the sustainability coordinator for the city of Cincinnati, he also mentioned a recent conversation with Fifth Third expressing interest in directly sponsoring. So one of the pros to this project, obviously, is it provides an incentive to buyers in the private market. However, one of the cons at the same time is involving city forest credits, and then you don't have that direct sponsorship. So just kind of pro and con of that there. So kind of one of the questions moving forward is, does Fifth Third, do they want carbon plus credits, or would they just rather directly sponsor a large scale tree planting? The other thing that I wanted to mention from the Carbon Committee, also, I think Reno maybe mentioned it, is Dave Gamstetter. He is working with the foundation as well on a carbon calculator, which is basically a smaller scale fundraising opportunity. So what it is you would go to the Parks Foundation website, and it would be on the front page and say, hey, do you want to offset your carbon footprint? It would be very easy. You could easily type in your credit card information within like 3 minutes or so, and it calculates, for example, if you go on a trip and you're like, I'm going to be driving to Florida and back for the next week, and then it would calculate how much carbon output you would give, and then you offset it. And that funding would build pretty quickly is the hope. And we could also use that as an initial funds for starting something like a planting project. So I do have a handout that I'll send you guys with a little bit more detail. I'll send it with the meeting minutes if you want to look it over.
Okay.
But that is the basics behind it. Are there any general questions? I'm happy to answer.
Anybody have any questions? Sounds very complete.
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The city forest credits makes it pretty easy. They do have some projects right now that are in the works. Some are 3 years in, some are 4 years in, and they're pretty successful so far. It's really cool to see, like, you know, basically it's just partnership between the private and public. And one thing I didn't mention that's pretty important is, so obviously we'll be the overseers, Urban Forestry, Cincinnati Parks Foundation, but the groundwork, the actual planting of the trees and the maintenance of, you know, say a 5,000 tree planting project, we'd be partnering with Groundwork Ohio River Valley, and they are already on board. So that's another huge piece of the puzzle that we have help with. So my next steps in this is basically weighing the options between like direct sponsorship from one of the big businesses. This particular strategy, I'm building out a cost benefit, how the financials will work out so we can compare it to other projects. And hopefully I will have that done in the next couple of weeks. But obviously we'll need some guidance there. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
Goodness sakes. Does anyone have any comments on this? I think it sounds wonderful.
This is Angie. I do have a question on that. So yeah, I guess my question is, what is the company getting? And I'm wondering if that translates into some sort of a development project, or if they're building a new building. Like, does that carbon offset getting them something with their development? Does that make any sense? Like larger size or? you know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Are you saying when you say company, are you saying like the buyer who's buying the credit? What do they get?
Yes.
Yeah. So as far as buyers, who we'll be targeting is buyers interested locally in having like a, hey, look what we did for the community. And what they would get is the ability to say, we have purchased carbon credits due to, for example, like P&G, they're always making products and producing a carbon footprint. So they could say they're trying to curb their carbon footprint. They could say they have the credits, as well as look at this local project we're giving back to the community. This is where the credits go.
Okay. So it's not, in my mind, I was thinking about like LEED certification of a building, right? So I was trying to think of weighing that, how a business would benefit from that. Something, I don't want to say something tangible, maybe that's not the right word, but some physical thing. But in reality, it's probably not. It's just in their greater, maybe corporate structure to offset what they're doing already.
Yeah,
you
and
know,
that's
with their
the trend right
products.
now. You know,
Right,
it's
okay.
like, hey, look at us trying. But you do mention something that I didn't bring up, Angie, in regarding like LEED certification stuff. I'm also looking into partnering, like for example, with like a green LEED infrastructure or like a Soul, their local company, and seeing how we can partner with them, not with this project, but maybe you and I could do a sidebar and talk about that. But yeah, in this case, the physical thing that they would be getting is like the look at what we're helping with the community, and our money is going to offsetting our carbon as well as giving you guys like products, an example of P&G.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because unfortunately carbon is not regulated
No.
yet. So yeah, it's more of a feel-good thing.
Yeah. And Angie, another example, there's like a Microsoft did a really big carbon credit purchase for a community in Des Moines, Iowa, where they ended up having one of their hubs. So now, you know, if you look on like Microsoft in that hub's website, it's like, look at what we're doing for the community. We're not that bad. You know what I mean? And they're not, right? They're doing a lot of good things, but just that whole advertising of we're trying our best to reduce our carbon impact.
And for us, it will give us unrestricted funds to increase the canopy where it's needed most. That's the ultimate goal of the program.
Yeah, and to that point, Crystal, for example, like the 10% of the projected credits, like all of this economic cost we would have predicted up front. And then when we sell it to the buyer, it's, I mean, yes, it goes back into obviously the tree planting project, but any extra funds we're not restricted on. So we can use it to buy more trees for another project. We can plant more trees in the same area. So it is nice in the sense that they don't really put a restriction on that. Because we're the ones selling it.
Or we could use it to maintain the trees that are going in, because the end goal would be to keep them alive for at least 40 years.
Yes, yeah.
Boy,
Awesome.
sounds absolutely wonderful.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Lindsay.
And I'll keep you posted.
Further, I see under new business 2022 budget, which we've somewhat discussed already.
Yeah. So at the end of last year, we were talking about increasing the urban forestry assessment 10 cents, and that conversation was largely pushed by the mayor. I put this on here, you know, a couple weeks ago as a placeholder to have this discussion while I was probing the leadership's interest in pursuing that assessment increase. Since then, I've gotten the hard no. So basically my proposal is to keep our budget the same at 21 cents per linear foot. So we will have the same projected budget for next year as we did for 2021. So that would be 2.4 million. So it'll be basically the same exact breakdown as we've had before. So what I'll be doing over the next month, and one of the major things that we'll be discussing at our next meeting and approving will be that 2022 budget, as well as a work plan to go with those funds. In that, I will also include a plan for expending the 900,000 that we have in excess in our budget currently. So we have a good flush of funds coming in. That means a lot of good work to come. Particularly, planting and caring for young trees is one of our biggest endeavors.
Right.
So just know that that's what's coming down the pike, and be prepared. And I will get that budget out to you guys at least 2 weeks prior to our next meeting, so that you have plenty of time to review prior to approval.
I was gonna say, aren't you in kind of a bad way to ask for additional money when we have 900,000 left over?
I just found out about the 900,000 yesterday.
It
So.
seems like, whoa.
Yeah. So we're in a good place. We're in a very good place.
Is there any discussion on this matter? I guess we do vote on this budget for 2022. And is there any further discussion? If not, I'll take a vote on the matter. We don't even have quorum, but that's all right.
Yeah, let's
We don't have a quorum, so we can't vote on it anyway. But
yeah, and I
there-
want to.
Are there any questions? Good.
Yeah, I want to get the work plan together too for you guys to review
Before we,
prior to approval. So it will be very important for us to meet quorum at our next meeting, which hopefully should be easier with Scott Borline filling in one of the vacancies. So.
Right. Thursday, December 10. Now, I have a little bit of situation asking about tomorrow. Don't we have
That's more of us.
Hmm?
That's just us.
that's just the three of us. Okay. 4 of us. Yeah. All right. We will then talk about that. Any further conversation, Paul?
Nope.
Nope. Reno, where are you?
I'm right here.
Okay.
I'm here.
Anyone else? Angie?
No, I didn't have anything else. Thank you.
Anyone else have any conversation more? Well, then we'll take a motion to adjourn if that's fine.
Happy Thanksgiving. I have a motion to adjourn.
All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All right, we will see you in some form or other in December.
Yes, thank you all very much for your time. We'll be sending out meeting minutes in that 2 weeks prior to the next meeting. And we will continue on our Zoom conference calls. So thank you. Have a good day.
Wonderful. Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye, y'all. Have a nice Thanksgiving.